The council chamber was built to make visitors feel small. It hung in the hollow of a dead moon, carved into the stone like a cathedral turned inside out. No windows, no stars, just layers of black crystal and living metal that drank light instead of reflecting it. The air tasted different depending on where you stood, warm and floral near the verdant choir, sharp and sterile near the mechanists, faintly metallic around the old empires who preferred oxygen laced with minerals. At the center, a ring of seats floated above a floor that looked like frozen smoke. Each seat held a species that had survived long enough to earn the right to vote on everyone else's survival. And on the outer ring, one step down, one unspoken rank lower, sat the humans. Mara Vance kept her hands folded in her lap the way her instructors had taught her. Calm posture, neutral face, eyes forward. No sudden movements that might be translated as aggression by something that had evolved with claws. She wore the standard diplomatic uniform, dark, simple, no medals. The council disliked symbols of pride. The irony never stopped burning. On the display behind the high chair, a star map rotated slowly, dozens of systems marked in soft gold. The council core, the safe lanes, the civilized space. And then, off to one side like a stain they could not scrub away, was humanity's region, smaller than the old powers, brighter than it should be, pulsing with new stations and shipyards the council pretended not to notice. Mara heard a soft hiss of translation as a delegate from the Vayari leaned toward her. Their eyes were too large, their skin almost transparent. Their voice came through the collar translator like a whisper through glass. Human Delegate Vance, Vayari said, polite as a blade. You look tense. Mara's mouth barely moved. Just focused. The Vayari blinked slowly. Focus is admirable, but unnecessary. The council has handled crises older than your son. She wanted to laugh. She swallowed it. Across the chamber, the high chair rose a fraction. The sound of the chamber quieting was not silence. It was 1,000 species deciding to stop making noise at the same time. The high chair belonged to Speaker Othuan, a being whose body looked like layered stone, whose voice sounded like a mountain shifting in sleep. Session begins, Othuan announced. Light rippled through the floor. The translation network came alive. Somewhere above them, hidden in the dead moon's core, the council's record engines started to write history. Mara glanced at the human seat beside her. Ambassador Kinji Ro sat straight-backed, older than Mara by 2 decades, face carved into calm. His eyes never stopped moving. A veteran of too many negotiations where smiles hid traps. He did not look at her, but his fingertips tapped once against his armrest, their private signal. Ready. Mara's throat tightened. She was ready in the way a person was ready for a storm they could see coming and could not stop. Speaker Othuan continued. Item 1. Border disturbances in the Sable Reach. Mara's heart stuttered. The Sable Reach was not a distant neutral frontier. It was the edge of human space, a chain of systems where mining colonies and transit stations kept the supply lines flowing. Not glamorous, not important to the council, important to Earth. The map shifted. A cluster of stars flickered red. A murmur passed through the chamber, disinterest from most, annoyance from a few, and something colder from the old empires seated closest to the high chair. A Talvex delegate spoke first. Their species had long limbs and a voice like cracking ice. These disturbances, the Talvex said, are internal matters. The council should not waste its cycles. Mara's jaw clenched. Internal matters. As if the Reach was not full of mixed species crews, council chartered routes, and shared stations. As if it was acceptable for a young region to bleed in silence. Ambassador Ro raised his hand. Slowly, respectfully. Speaker Othuan acknowledged him with a slight tilt of stone. Human voice, Othuan said. The words were neutral. The tone was not. Ro stood. He did not project anger. He projected restraint. The Sable Reach has suffered 3 incidents in 14 days, he said. 2 civilian cargo convoys vanished. 1 relay station went dark. We have evidence of unauthorized fleet movement in the area. We request a joint investigation team and a temporary security corridor. The chamber did not respond with outrage. Outrage would have meant they cared. Instead, there was the soft sound of hundreds of species exchanging looks, translators catching the edges of words not meant for human ears. Mara heard a phrase in the background, too quiet for most. Her translator picked it up anyway. Deathworlders are nervous again. Her nails pressed into her palm. Deathworlders. The word they used when they wanted to sound scientific instead of afraid. A delegate from the Seraph Union, tall, elegant, coated in shimmering fur, leaned forward with a smile that never reached their eyes. Ambassador Rowe, the Seraph purred, your people are energetic. Sometimes energy creates misunderstandings. Could these vanishings be the result of human overreach? Smugglers? Unlicensed experiments? Mara felt the blood rise in her face. Blame the victim. Suggest humans caused their own missing ships. Rowe did not flinch. Our ships were on Council-sanctioned routes. Their manifests are filed. Their crews include Council citizens. Saratha's smile widened. And yet, no wreckage. No transmissions. Only your claims. Mara could not stay silent. She stood. Every human in the chamber knew the rule. Speak only when invited. But they also knew what happened when you obeyed every rule made to keep you quiet. Speaker Othuan, Mara said, voice steady. If council routes can be erased without response, then no route is safe. This is not a human matter. This is a precedent. The high chair's gaze, if it could be called that, settled on her. Pressure filled the chamber, the unspoken weight of authority. Your concern is noted, Othuan said. Not addressed. Not respected. Not acted upon. Noted. Mara forced herself to continue. We have partial sensor echoes. A signature pattern consistent with military-grade null-field masking. That level of equipment is not used by smugglers. Now the murmurs sharpened. Null fields were forbidden near trade lanes. Too many accidents. Too many mistakes that could hide crimes. A mechanist delegate, all angles and humming lights, spoke in clipped tones. Evidence. Rowe gestured. A human aid triggered the projection. A thin line of data appeared above the floor. Distorted. Fragmented. But unmistakably artificial. Like the shadow of something massive moving through space without wanting to be seen. Mara saw several delegates shift. So they did understand. They just did not want to say it out loud. The Talvex delegate's eyes narrowed. That could be fabricated. Mara's voice sharpened before she could stop it. Then send investigators. Confirm it. That is what we are asking. Silence. Not the silence of agreement. The silence of a room deciding what it could get away with. Speaker Othuan's voice rolled again. The council will deliberate. Mara sat slowly, pulse pounding. Deliberate means delay. Delay meant more missing ships. Delay meant the Reach would become a graveyard while the council argued about paperwork. Rowe's fingertips tapped once again. Careful. Mara kept her face still. But inside, dread coiled. Because she had seen this pattern before. Not with humans. Humans had only been here for a few decades. But in classified briefings, in archived recordings, in the hidden history Earth had pieced together from alien mistakes. This was how the council handled threats. They waited until someone else bled enough that the problem solved itself. The session moved on to smaller matters. Trade disputes. Water rights on a colony world. An argument over asteroid mining quotas. Mara's mind stayed on the red cluster of stars. 3 incidents in 14 days. It wasn't random. And whoever was doing it had chosen the one region the council would not defend quickly. Halfway through the session, a message arrived in Mara's private feed. Not through official council channels. Through a narrowband relay tied directly to Earth. Encrypted. Priority Crimson. Her breath caught. She kept her eyes on the chamber while her implant decoded the text behind her vision. From Earth Fleet Liaison Command to Delegate Mara Vance Subject. Sable Reach Update. The first line appeared. Station Larkspur has gone dark. Mara's stomach turned to ice. Larkspur wasn't just a relay station. It was a refueling hub. A civilian port. Families live there. Kids. Contractors. Medical staff. The message continued. No distress signal. No life signs detected on wide scan. Last transmission, emergency code black. Black meant something had entered the station. Something the station's crew believed could not be stopped. Mara did not move. She did not let her face betray her. But her pulse was loud in her ears. Beside her, Rowe's implant must have received the same message. His jaw tightened for a fraction of a second. Then his expression returned to calm. Mara admired him for that. She hated him for it too, because calm was a mask that could shatter if the truth hit hard enough. Speaker Othuan called a recess. Delegates rose, flowing into private alcoves and side halls like schools of fish separating by species. Mara stood with Ro and moved toward the human corridor, one of the few places without listening spires hidden in the walls. Their corridor was plain. No art, no plants, no warm lighting. Just clean metal and the faint hum of a life support system that did not care who breathed. As soon as the door sealed, Ro spoke. "Say it," he said quietly. Mara's voice came out tight. "Larkspur is gone." Ro nodded once. "We feared that." Mara stared at him. "Fears? Kenji, this is an attack." "Yes." His eyes were hard now. "And the council will call it an unfortunate incident." Mara's hands curled. "Then we force them. We show them." "We." Ro raised a hand, cutting her off. "We already showed evidence." They dismissed it. "They are not blind, Mara." She swallowed. "Then what are they?" Ro did not answer immediately. He looked at the sealed door as if he could see the chamber through it. "Old," he said at last. "Cautious, self-serving, and frightened of anything they can't control." Mara took a step closer. "Are you saying they're letting this happen?" Ro's silence was an answer. Mara felt something inside her shift, like a plate of ice cracking underfoot. "But why?" she demanded. Larkspur had council citizens. Mixed crews. Trade. Ro's voice turned colder. "Because it's happening in human space. Because if it becomes a human problem, the council can watch from a safe distance. And if humanity weakens, the council solves another long-term concern without firing a shot." Mara's throat tightened. "They want us smaller. They want us to be predictable," Ro corrected. "Smaller is just a side benefit." Mara looked down at her hands. She realized they were shaking. She still forced them. "What does Earth say?" she asked. Ro's implant glowed faintly as he opened another stream. His voice lowered. "Earth has activated Protocol Ember." Mara felt her lungs lock. Protocol Ember was not public. It wasn't even on most military databases. It was the kind of protocol you only built if you believed one day the galaxy would turn on you. "What does it mean?" she whispered, even though she already knew. Ro met her eyes. "It means restraint has been lifted. It means the fleet is mobilizing. It means—" He hesitated. That scared her more than any other sign. "It means the council is about to learn what humanity has been hiding behind polite smiles." Mara's mouth went dry. "They'll call it aggression." "They already do," Ro said. "In private. They just haven't had proof." Mara leaned against the wall, suddenly needing something solid. She tried to imagine Earth's fleet mobilizing. The shipyards, the carriers, the dreadnought frames kept in deep orbit, sealed under layers of law and deception. Humanity had always said it wanted peace. And it did. But peace was not the same thing as helplessness. A soft chime came from the corridor door. A council aide, non-human, faceless behind a translator veil, stood outside. "Human delegates," it said. "You are requested back in session. Immediate." Ro's eyes narrowed. "Requested." Mara pushed off the wall. "Why immediate?" Ro's implant pulsed. He read something. His expression tightened. "They're calling an emergency vote," he said. Mara's pulse quickened. "About the Reach?" Ro looked at her. "About us." They returned to the chamber. The atmosphere had changed. The murmurs were louder. The old empires leaned close to one another. The star maps still showed the Sable Reach, but now additional markers had appeared around it, like a tightening net. Speaker Othuan's voice rolled out. "New information has been presented to the council." Mara's skin prickled. New information from whom? A Talvex delegate rose, voice sharp. "Humanity has been detected mobilizing military assets," it announced. "Fleet construction surges. Autonomous factories. War-grade AI activations." Mara's blood went cold. They knew, or they had been told. Ro stood slowly. "Earth is responding to attacks on its civilians." The Talvex's eyes gleamed. "Or preparing to seize the frontier under the excuse of victimhood." The Seraph purred. "We warn this chamber. The Deathworlders are unstable when frightened." Mara's hands clenched again. She couldn't help it. Speaker Othuan raised a heavy arm. "Order." The chamber quieted. Othuan's gaze settled on the humans. "The council will now vote on an emergency motion," Othuan said. "Motion: establish a containment perimeter around human territory to prevent escalation." Containment. Mara heard the word like a gunshot. Containment meant blockade. Isolation. It meant cutting Earth off from allies, from supply routes, from external witnesses. It meant giving whoever was attacking the Reach free access while humanity was boxed in. Ro's voice stayed controlled, but Mara could hear the steel underneath. This motion is unjust, he said. It punishes the attacked party. It preserves peace, Othuan said. Mara stood without permission, voice rising. It preserves your comfort, she snapped. You're not preserving peace. You're preserving a system that lets powerful species decide who gets to live quietly and who gets erased quietly. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Some delegates looked offended. Some looked frightened. And a few, only a few, looked ashamed. Speaker Othuan's voice thundered through the translator network. Human Delegate Vance, it said, slow and heavy. You will control your tone. Mara's heart hammered. She forced herself to breathe. Control, she echoed. That's all this has ever been about. Ro touched her arm. Gentle, a warning. Mara sat. Barely. The voting lights ignited around the chamber. One by one, seats glowed. Gold for yes. Blue for no. Mara watched, sick, as gold spread like infection. Not all. Not even most. But enough. The motion passed. Containment perimeter authorized. Earth boxed in. Humanity is officially labeled a risk. Mara felt her vision narrow. Ro remained standing, voice quiet but carrying. Then you have chosen, he said. Speaker Othuan did not respond. It didn't need to. The council had spoken. They had chosen fear over fairness, control over truth, and betrayal over alliance. Mara's implant chimed again, another crimson message from Earth. She opened it with trembling eyes. Earth fleet departure confirmed. Destination, Council Core. Message to deliver if contact is made. A final line appeared. Mara read it once. Then again, as if her brain refused to accept it. Ro leaned closer. What does it say? Mara's voice came out as a whisper. It says. She swallowed. It says Earth's fleet is arriving. Ro's face did not change, but his eyes darkened. And Mara looked back up at the council chamber, at the glowing gold votes, at the ancient species who believed they had just contained a problem. She whispered the last words of the message, feeling the weight of them settle into her bones. Earth's fleet is arriving, she repeated, and it's carrying an announcement. Ro's voice was barely audible. What announcement? Mara stared at the star map, at the council core glittering like a crown. Then she spoke, and her words felt like the first crack of a collapsing universe. Total devastation, she said. Across the stars, and somewhere beyond the dead moon, far beyond the chamber's false safety, humanity's engines lit the dark. No alarms sounded when Earth's fleet left orbit. That was the first thing that made it unsettling. Across human space, billions of people went about their lives under blue skies and artificial suns, unaware that the largest coordinated military movement in human history was unfolding above them. No emergency broadcasts, no dramatic speeches, no banners of defiance, just silence. On Earth, the fleet did not depart in a single blaze of engines. That would have been noticed. Fears, misunderstood. Instead, ships slipped away in measured intervals, folding into deep space corridors that had never been registered with the Council. Lanes calculated not for speed alone, but for invisibility. Paths drawn by mathematicians, not admirals. Humanity had learned long ago that the loudest moves invited the fastest opposition. Mara Vance felt that silence like pressure behind her eyes. The council chamber buzzed with restrained energy after the vote, the kind that followed a decision everyone knew would echo farther than intended. Delegates spoke in clusters now, no longer bothering to hide their conversations behind courtesy. Translation fields struggled to keep up with overlapping tones, with rising agitation and poorly masked relief. Containment had been authorized. In their minds, the problem was solved. Mara sat very still in her seat, staring at the star map that still glowed above the chamber floor. The sable reach pulsed faintly in red. The council core shimmered gold. Between them, 1,000 light-years of space that would soon be anything but empty. Ambassador Ro remained standing beside her. He had not reclaimed his seat, not out of defiance, but because something in him had already moved on from the ritual of diplomacy. The council speaker addressed the chamber again, voice heavy with finality. The emergency motion stands, Othuan declared. Humanity will comply with containment protocols. Any violation will be met with collective response. Collective. The word tasted bitter. Mara activated a private channel to Ro. They think we'll hesitate. Ro's reply came without looking at her. They think we'll argue. She swallowed. Will we? Ro's lips pressed into a thin line. Earth argued for 50 years. It took longer. Across the chamber, a delegate from a minor trade species approached the human section cautiously. Its limbs were thin, its posture low, a species that had survived by avoiding attention. "Delegate Vance," it said softly, the translator smoothing its nervous clicks. "Is it true? Is your fleet really mobilizing?" Mara met its many-faceted eyes. She did not lie. "Yes." The delegate's shoulders slumped. "Then there will be war." Mara shook her head slowly. "There will be consequences." The distinction mattered. The delegate hesitated, then leaned closer. "The Council believes your people are emotional, that you will strike in anger." Mara thought of Earth's silent shipyards, of engines warming without ceremony. "Anger is loud," she said. "This isn't anger." The delegate recoiled slightly, as if sensing something colder beneath her words. It bowed and retreated. Ro exhaled through his nose. "Word will spread now. Quietly. The smart ones will listen. And the rest?" Mara asked. Ro's eyes flicked toward the high chair. "They'll learn." Far from the Council core, beyond registered hyperspace lanes, the first human formation crossed a boundary no chart acknowledged. They did not announce themselves. They did not fire. They simply appeared. Admiral Elias Ward stood on the command deck of the UNS Resolute, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on a tactical display that showed a dozen systems at once. Each glowed with layers of data, traffic patterns, defense grids, energy signatures, civilian density. This was not a battlefield yet. That mattered. "Fleet status," Ward said calmly. A voice answered, not human, but shaped to sound like one. "Fleet coherence at 99.9%, the AI reported. No detection spikes. Council sensors remain blind." Ward nodded. "Maintain posture." The AI paused, a fraction of a second longer than necessary. "Admiral," it said, "Council monitoring arrays will recalibrate within 48 standard hours." "I know," Ward replied. "Once recalibrated." The AI continued. "Containment forces may engage." Ward's gaze never left the display. "Then they'll see us." "Understood," the AI said. There was no fear in its voice. Humanity had not built fear into its war intelligences. Fear clouded judgment. But neither had they built obedience without conscience. That was the difference the Council never understood. "Admiral," the AI added. "Authorization confirmation required." Ward turned, finally, to face the core display. A simple human design choice in a universe obsessed with spectacle. "Confirm," he said. Across the fleet, systems unlocked. Weapons did not power up. Not yet. But limits were lifted. Back in the Council chamber, the first crack appeared in the illusion of control. A mechanist delegate stiffened as internal diagnostics spiked. Its body lights flickered in patterns that signaled alarm. "Speaker," it said sharply. "Long-range sensors report anomalies." The murmurs returned, louder now. "Anomalies?" Othuan asked. "Gravitational distortions along multiple trade corridors," the mechanist replied. "Consistent with high-mass fleet movement using non-standard transit methods." Mara felt her pulse quicken. The Talvex delegate rose. "Human tricks." The mechanist's lights flared. "No. This is refined. Purposeful." Speaker Othuan shifted. "Clarify." The mechanist hesitated. That alone sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. "These signatures resemble ancient transit phenomena," it said slowly, "but with precision beyond known empires." Ancient. Mara thought of Earth's archives, of technologies shelved because they were deemed too destabilizing for a galaxy built on fragile balances. A Seraph delegate scoffed. "Speculation." Before the mechanist could respond, another voice cut in. One of the older empires, rarely heard, rarely interrupted. "The humans are not speculating," it said. The chamber stilled. The speaker was from a species that predated the Council itself. Their seat hovered close to the high chair, earned through endurance rather than power. "We have seen this pattern before," the elder delegate continued. "Long ago, when a younger species learned that pleading did not preserve them." Othuan's tone hardened. "Are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting," the elder said calmly, "that containment will not contain." Mara's chest tightened. The Council speaker raised a heavy arm. "Order. The Council does not respond to hypotheticals." The elder's gaze drifted, briefly, to the human section. "Then you will respond to reality," it said. The first reality arrived not as an explosion, but as absence. A monitoring station near the Sable Reach vanished from Council networks. Not destroyed, not attacked, simply gone. No debris, no energy spike, just a hole where data should have been. Mara's implant chimed. This time, the message was not crimson. It was clear, unencrypted, broadcast-wide. Her breath caught as the text unfolded, mirrored across public council displays before anyone could stop it. To the Council of Aligned Systems from Earth. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted. Translation fields overloaded. Othuan's voice boomed for order, but the message continued regardless. Humanity had not hacked the council. They had been invited in. The message scrolled slowly, deliberately. You authorized containment in the name of peace. You dismissed civilian deaths as border disturbances. You believed restraint was weakness. Mara's throat tightened. She recognized the phrasing. Earth had chosen its words with care. Not threats. Statements. Containment is now impossible. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The Talvex delegate roared. Shut it down. Mechanist systems flared. Unable. Signal is embedded across council infrastructure. The message continued. This is not a declaration of war. This is a correction. Mara felt the weight of those words settle into her bones. Othuan rose fully now, towering. Earth, the speaker thundered. You violate council law. The message did not pause. We warned you. You chose delay. You chose containment. The star map shifted. Dozens of gold systems flickered. Then it changed color. Not red. Gray. Disconnected. Council trade routes collapsed in real time as human fleets severed them. Not by destruction, but by control. Jump points destabilized. Navigation beacons went dark. Supply chains froze. The galaxy did not burn. It stopped. The elder delegate spoke again, voice steady amid the chaos. This is devastation, it said quietly. Not of worlds. Of certainty. Mara realized her hands were no longer shaking. She felt something else instead. Clarity. The message reached its final lines. We will not erase you. We will remove the systems that allow you to erase others. A pause. Then the last sentence appeared, stark against the star map. The stars are no longer yours alone. Silence fell, not forced this time. Earned. Speaker Othuan stood frozen, stone form etched with something new. Uncertainty. Mara exhaled slowly. Earth's fleet had arrived. Not with fire, but with consequence. And this was only the beginning. The galaxy did not react all at once. That, too, surprised everyone. There was no single scream of outrage, no unified counterstrike, no heroic rally of fleets rushing to defend the old order. Instead, reactions fractured along the same fault lines the Council had spent centuries pretending did not exist. Some systems panicked. Some went silent. Some watched very carefully. In the Council chamber, the star map remained suspended in an unfamiliar state. Gray corridors where gold certainty had once flowed. Trade lanes that had carried food, medicine, and data for entire regions were now inert. Not destroyed, simply unavailable. It was like discovering the roads had vanished overnight. Speaker Othuan stood motionless, its stone-like form etched with stress fractures that were not physical, but political. Around it, the delegates no longer argued about protocol. They argued about survival. This is extortion, a Talvex shouted. They are strangling commerce. They have violated neutrality, another voice cried. A mechanist delegate overrode the noise with a sharp tone. Correction. They have violated dependence. That single sentence shifted the room. Dependence. The Council had built its peace on interlocking needs. Fuel from one region, food from another, transit from a third. It is called this balance. Humanity had just demonstrated how fragile that balance truly was. Mara Vance stood among the humans, no longer seated, no longer pretending this was diplomacy as usual. She felt eyes on her from every direction, some burning with anger, others with fear, and a few with something dangerously close to hope. A delegate from a border species approached her openly now, ignoring decorum. You planned this, it said, accusation and awe tangled together. All of it. Mara met its gaze. No. The delegate recoiled slightly. You deny? We prepared, Mara said evenly. Planning implies intent. This was a contingency. For what? The delegate demanded. Mara's voice softened. For being betrayed. The delegate had no answer for that. Across the chamber, Ambassador Rowe was deep in a heated exchange with several council representatives. His tone was calm, but his words cut. "You contained us without investigation," he said. "You dismissed our dead. And now you're surprised we stopped asking." Speaker Othuan finally spoke again, voice heavier than before. "Earth must reverse these actions," it said. "Restore transit. Submit to mediation." Mara felt a familiar flare of anger, but it did not control her anymore. "Submit?" she asked quietly. The speaker's gaze turned to her. "Human delegate." "Submission," Mara continued, louder now, "is what you asked for when our colonies were attacked, and you chose delay. Submission is what you asked for when you voted to isolate us instead of the aggressors." Her voice echoed through the chamber. "You didn't ask for peace," she said. "You asked for obedience." The chamber erupted again, but this time the noise had a different texture. Less confidence, more fear. Because something else was happening beyond the walls of the dead moon. In the outer systems, where council authority thinned into suggestion, human fleets began to encounter resistance. Not from the great empires, from the frightened middle powers. Admiral Elias Ward watched a live feed as a coalition patrol fleet maneuvered into defensive formation near a severed corridor. Their ships were smaller than Earth's capital vessels, but numerous, bristling with weapons they barely knew how to use. "They're scared," Ward said quietly. The AI responded. "Fear probability exceeds 70%. They think we're coming for them," Ward murmured. "Intent clarification requested," the AI said. "Are we?" Ward was silent for a moment. "No," he said finally. "But they don't know that yet." A junior officer spoke up. "Admiral, Coalition Command is transmitting. They demand withdrawal." Ward nodded. "Open channel." The display flickered to life, revealing a non-human commander with a rigid posture and eyes that betrayed exhaustion. "This is restricted space," the commander said. "Your presence constitutes an act of aggression." Ward leaned forward slightly. "Your fleets were never restricted from human space." The commander's jaw tightened. "That was different." "Yes," Ward agreed. "It was." A pause stretched between them. "What do you want?" the commander asked at last. Ward did not answer immediately. He gestured, and the AI overlaid a new map. Civilian populations, medical stations, trade hubs now cut off by the collapse of council transit. "You're about to lose food shipments," Ward said. "Medical supplies. Not because we destroyed them. Because the council built a system that collapses without its approval." The commander stared. "Then fix it." Ward's voice was steady. "We will. But not by restoring the old order." Silence. Then, quietly, "What does that mean?" "It means you choose," Ward said. "Continue enforcing containment. Or work with us to keep your people alive." The commander's eyes flicked off-screen, conferring with unseen advisors. "You're forcing us to take sides," the commander said bitterly. Ward shook his head. "No. The council did that. We're just refusing to pretend neutrality still exists." The channel cut. Ward straightened. "Maintain position," he ordered. "No weapons lock. Let them decide." Behind him, the AI spoke again. "Admiral, probability of hostile engagement increasing." Ward's voice was quiet. "Then we absorb it." Back at the council core, the consequences grew sharper. Entire delegations demanded emergency aid as supply chains failed. Old rivals accused one another of hoarding. Smaller species realized, too late, that their security had always depended on human shipping and manufacturing contracts quietly woven into the council's economy. Humanity had not dominated the system. It had been holding it together. Mara stood before a hastily convened subcouncil now. A smaller chamber, sealed and tense. Representatives of several border species were present. So was Speaker Othuan. "We were not aware of the extent of your integration," one delegate admitted stiffly. Mara did not soften her response. "You never asked." Othuan's voice rumbled. "This destabilization risks galactic collapse." "Yes," Mara said. "So did ignoring attacks on our civilians." A sharp intake of breath followed her words. Othuan leaned forward. "If you continue, the council may be forced to authorize direct action." Mara met the speaker's gaze, unflinching. "You already did," she said, "when you voted to contain us." For the first time, something like doubt rippled through the ancient being. "You assume unity among your people," Othuan said. "But internal fracture is common under pressure. Are you certain Earth will not break?" Mara thought of the silent departure of the fleet. Of no speeches. No panic. She smiled faintly. You misunderstand us. How? Othuan demanded. We don't unify when threatened, Mara said. We unify when the line is crossed. The chamber fell quiet. A junior council aide burst into the room, ignoring protocol. Speaker, it said urgently. Multiple council-aligned fleets have disengaged. They are refusing orders. What? Othuan roared. They report logistical impossibility. The aide continued. And moral objection. Mara closed her eyes briefly. The galaxy was learning. Not everyone liked the lesson. The first shots of the new conflict were fired hours later. Not by humans. A coalition patrol, panicked and cornered, opened fire on a human escort near a civilian convoy. Energy lances tore through empty space, missing by kilometers, but the message was clear. Fear had turned into violence. Admiral Ward watched the footage without expression. Damage? He asked. None, the AI replied. Convoy intact. Ward exhaled slowly. Transmit again. Medical supplies only. No escort. Admiral. A commander protested. That leaves them exposed. Ward turned. So did Larkspur. The order was carried out. The convoy moved forward alone. And the coalition fleet, shaken, uncertain, did not fire again. Word spread faster than any broadcast. Humans were not retaliating blindly. They were choosing where force mattered. That made them more dangerous than anyone had expected. In the council chamber, Mara felt the shift before she heard it. The noise had changed again. Don't panic. Not outrage. Calculation. Delegates were no longer asking how to stop humanity. They were asking how to survive the reshaping. Ro leaned close to her, voice low. The council has lost control. Mara nodded. They never really had it. Ro's eyes were tired. This will get worse. Yes, Mara agreed. Because now comes the hard part. What's that? He asked. Mara looked at the star map, at the gray corridors slowly being replaced by new, human-established routes that bypassed the council entirely. Proving we're not here to replace them, she said. Ro followed her gaze. And if the galaxy doesn't believe that? Mara's expression hardened, not with anger, but resolve. Then we keep choosing restraint, she said, even when it costs us. She paused. Because if we don't, she added quietly, then the council was right to fear us. Beyond the chamber, fleets maneuvered, alliances cracked, and the galaxy edged closer to a future no one had voted for. Humanity had survived betrayal. Now it had to survive what came after, and that would require more than power. It would require judgment. The first true battle did not happen where the galaxy expected it. It did not erupt at the council core, nor along the heavily watched borders of human space. It began instead in a forgotten system, one the council had classified as non-essential centuries ago and then quietly abandoned. The system's name translated loosely as Ashkal Rift. It held no great industry, no political weight, just a fractured star, a scattering of habitats, and a population that had learned how to survive without help. That was why the council chose it. And that was why humanity noticed immediately. Admiral Elias Ward stood with his hands clasped behind his back as the tactical display filled with red. This is not a containment patrol, he said calmly. No, the AI replied. Council-aligned force composition indicates punitive intent. Objective, demonstration. Ward closed his eyes for half a second. Ashkal Rift sat astride one of the newly established human transit corridors, a route designed specifically to move civilian aid around collapsed council lanes. It was fragile by design, transparent, honest. The council fleet knew that. They're trying to provoke us, a captain said. Force us to defend the corridor. Make us fire first. Ward nodded. Yes. And if we don't, another asked. Ward opened his eyes. Then the lesson changes. The council fleet emerged from hyperspace in a disciplined wall of metal, ancient hulls, heavy weapons, banners of authority streaming across their hulls like accusations. A transmission blasted across all channels. Human vessels, the council commander declared, voice amplified and rigid. You are violating council sovereignty. Withdraw immediately or be neutralized. Ward did not answer. Instead, he gestured. The human fleet shifted, not forward, not into attack formation, but outward. Ships spread, creating a wide, unmistakable corridor that led directly away from Ashkal Rift. The AI transmitted on an open band. Civilian evacuation window open. Transit guaranteed. No hostile action will be taken against evacuating vessels. The council commander hesitated. That hesitation was recorded, analyzed, shared. Mara Vance watched the feed from the council chamber, breath shallow. They're giving them a way out, she whispered. Ro nodded grimly. And showing everyone who refuses to take it. Inside Ashkal Rift, civilian ships, old, mismatched, terrified, began to move. Engines flared. Signals blinked. Families fled through a corridor guarded not by guns, but by promise. The council commander barked orders. Ignore civilian traffic. Target human escorts. But the escorts did not engage. They absorbed fire. Energy lances struck human hulls and dissipated across layered shields designed for exactly this scenario. No return fire. No escalation. The council fleet hesitated again. Fear crept in, because they had been trained to fight enemies, not convictions. Back in the council chamber, chaos returned, but it was no longer loud. It was surgical. Delegates watched as the feed spread across the chamber. Ashkal Rift burning at its edges, civilians escaping under human protection, council weapons lighting up the void. A Seraph delegate hissed softly. They're turning optics against us. No, Mara said quietly, eyes locked on the display. They're showing the truth. Speaker Othuan's voice thundered. Recall the fleet. But the order came too late. A council battleship broke formation, either from panic or pride, and fired a concentrated barrage directly into the evacuation corridor. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Mara's breath caught. On the screen, a human cruiser moved. Not forward. Up. It slid into the path of the barrage, shields flaring white-hot as the impact struck. The force shredded its outer layers, venting atmosphere and debris, but the corridor held. The civilians passed through. The cruiser drifted, crippled but intact. Silence fell across the chamber. Then Admiral Ward's voice cut through every channel. Human, council, public. Calm. Even. This is your last warning, he said. Any further interference with civilian evacuation will be answered. The council commander snarled. By what? More shields? More theatrics? Ward did not raise his voice. By removal, he said. The human fleet moved. Not toward the council ships. Toward the space around them. Reality folded. Gravity twisted. The ancient transit phenomena the mechanists had warned about activated, not as weapons, but as constraints. Space itself bent into impossible angles, locking the council fleet in a shifting lattice of gravitational pressure. No explosions. No deaths. Just immobilization. Weapons could not align. Engines screamed uselessly. The council fleet was trapped, alive, intact, helpless. Across the galaxy, fleets watching the encounter froze. Mara exhaled slowly. They could have destroyed them, she murmured. Yes, Rose said. And they chose not to. The council chamber erupted, not in cheers, but in fear. Because restraint at that scale was terrifying. Speaker Othuan sagged slightly, stoned from grinding. You are humiliating us, it said to the chamber at large. Mara stepped forward. No, she said. We are exposing you. She turned, addressing the delegates openly now. You told the galaxy you preserved peace. But peace that only exists when no one resists is not peace. It's silence enforced by fear. A delegate from a minor species spoke up, voice shaking. What do you want from us? The question echoed. What did humanity want? Mara felt the weight of billions behind her. We want accountability, she said. We want systems where protection doesn't depend on age, power, or proximity to the core. And if we refuse, the Talvex demanded. Mara's eyes hardened, but her voice did not. Then we will continue doing what you failed to do, she said. Protect the vulnerable. Open the corridors. Break the monopolies that let you decide who matters. Othuan's voice was quieter now. You are dismantling the council. Mara shook her head. You dismantled yourselves when you chose betrayal. In Ashkal Rift, the last civilian ship escaped. Admiral Ward watched the trapped council fleet, weapons locked but silent. Maintain containment, he ordered. Medical aid to any damaged vessels. No prisoners. No prisoners, an officer asked. Ward nodded. They're not enemies anymore. The AI processed this. Then what are they? Ward's gaze lingered on the drifting ships. Examples, he said. Across the galaxy, something fundamental shifted. Humanity has demonstrated power, but more importantly, choice. They could have been annihilated. They chose restraint, and that restraint rewrote the equation. Back in the council chamber, Mara felt it in the air. The council was no longer the center. It was just another voice, one that had finally been forced to listen. Ro leaned close. This will define us. Mara nodded slowly. Yes. She looked up at the star map, where new routes glowed. Not gold, not gray, but a steady, human blue. And now, she said softly, we find out whether the galaxy deserves the mercy we just gave it. Because mercy, once seen, could never be unseen. And the next decision, whether to honor it or exploit it, would decide everything. Power always leaves a shadow. Humanity learned that in the weeks after Ashkal Rift, when the galaxy stopped shouting and started thinking. Trade did not resume all at once. It rerouted. Governments did not collapse in flames. They hollowed out quietly. And the council, once a symbol of inevitability, became something fragile, like an old monument no one dared tear down but no longer trusted to stand. Mara Vance felt that shift more sharply than most. The council chamber was still intact. The high chair still floated. The translators still hummed. But the room felt thinner, as if authority itself had lost mass. Delegates now arrived late. Some didn't arrive at all. Others sat with guarded posture, eyes flicking off and toward the human section, not with anger, but calculation. Speaker Othuan convened the session without ceremony. There will be no formal agenda, it announced. The council is reassessing. Reassessing. Mara almost smiled. That word would have been unthinkable a month ago. A delegate from a food-dependent coalition spoke first, abandoning ritual entirely. Our worlds are starving. Council stockpiles are inaccessible. Human corridors are the only functioning routes. Mara folded her hands calmly, then opened them. The delegate's crest flared. We cannot without council authorization. Mara tilted her head. You just did. The chamber stilled. Ro spoke gently, but his words carried. Human corridors do not require allegiance. They require transparency. No hidden fleets. No weaponized inspections. No selective protection. Another delegate, older, sharper, cut in. You're replacing the council with yourselves. Mara shook her head. No, we're removing the choke points. She stood, addressing the chamber openly. For centuries, this galaxy survived by believing stability came from control, from deciding who could move, who could trade, who could defend themselves. Her gaze swept the room. We are proving something different, she said. That stability comes from access. Silence followed. Not hostile, not accepting. Uncomfortable. Because access meant losing leverage. Far from the council core, that discomfort turned deadly. On the frontier world of Kelrin's fall, a power vacuum collapsed into violence. Kelrin had relied on council patrols to suppress old rivalries. When those patrols withdrew, caught between orders they no longer trusted, local factions armed themselves overnight. Human observers arrived first. Not warships. Hospitals. Admiral Ward watched the feeds with a clenched jaw as riots tore through Kelrin's capital. They warned us about this, a commander said. They said removing the council would cause chaos. Ward nodded slowly. They were right. Then why? Because the chaos was already there, Ward said. It was just being sat on. A transmission arrived from the surface. A local leader, bloodied and furious. You promised stability, the leader snarled. Instead, you broke the dam. Ward answered without flinching. No, we exposed the cracks. Now you decide how to rebuild. And if we fail? The leader demanded. Ward was quiet for a long moment. Then we will help you stand back up, he said. But we won't rule you. And we won't decide who wins. The leader stared at him, disbelief warring with desperation. That's not how power works, the leader said. Ward's voice softened. It is for us. Back at the council core, the backlash arrived. A coordinated block of old empires submitted a formal accusation. Humanity is destabilizing galactic order. Humanity is exercising de facto dominance. Humanity must be restrained. Mara read the motion in silence. Ro watched her carefully. They're afraid the narrative is slipping. It already has, Mara said. This is them trying to nail it back down. The emergency session that followed was unlike any before it. No shouting. No posturing. Just raw fear laid bare. You are too powerful, a delegate said bluntly. No species should have this level of influence. Mara did not deny it. Agreed. The chamber stirred. Speaker Othuen leaned forward. Then you accept the limitation? Mara met the speaker's gaze. No, she said. We accept responsibility. There was a difference. She continued. We will not dismantle our fleet. We will not resubmit to containment. But we will bind ourselves. How? Someone demanded. Mara gestured. A projection bloomed into the air. Human-authored accords. Open source. Irrevocable. Limits on deployment. Transparent AI oversight. Civilian first engagement doctrine encoded into fleet command. And most dangerous of all, shared enforcement. These safeguards, Mara said, can be audited. By anyone. At any time. The chamber erupted, not in outrage, but disbelief. Would you let others inspect your core systems? A mechanist demanded. Yes. That's insane, another delegate snapped. Mara's voice hardened. So is unchecked power. We know. We lived with it long before we reached the stars. Othuen was silent for a long time. When it spoke again, its voice was no longer thunderous. You are binding yourselves more tightly than the council ever did. Mara nodded. Because we don't trust ourselves either. That admission landed harder than any threat. The hardest moment came quietly. A report reached Mara hours later, classified, direct from Earth. A human task force, acting on outdated threat parameters, had overstepped on a neutral world. No civilians killed, but fear unleashed. Trust damaged. Mara closed her eyes. Power did not wait for permission to make mistakes. She forwarded the report, unaltered, to the council. Ro looked at her sharply. You didn't have to do that. Yes, she said softly. I did. The council convened again, stunned. Speaker Othuen spoke with something like respect. You offer us your failures. Mara met its gaze. Because if we hide them, we become you. The words hung heavy. Across the galaxy, reactions fractured once more. Some species embraced the new corridors. Some clung to the old order. Some quietly armed themselves, preparing for a future where no single authority could protect them. Humanity did not stop that. They accepted it. Admiral Ward stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching ships from dozens of species pass through a shared transit hub, uneasy, wary, alive. The AI spoke softly. The probability of long-term instability remains high. Ward nodded. That's freedom. The AI processed this. Then peace, as previously defined, is obsolete. Ward allowed himself a thin smile. Good, he said. Back in the council chamber, Mara stood alone for a moment after the session ended. The star map above her glowed differently now. Messier. More complex. More honest. Ro joined her. They'll never forgive us. Mara looked at the stars. I'm not asking for forgiveness. What are you asking for? She thought of Larkspur. Of Ashkel Rift. Of Kelrin's fall. Space, she said. To let the galaxy grow up. Ro studied her. And if it chooses another council someday? Mara's voice was quiet, but firm. Then we'll face that too. Because humanity had learned the final lesson of power. You don't win by ruling forever. You win by making yourself unnecessary. And that victory always comes at a cost. History did not mark the end of the council with fire. There were no burning capitals, no shattered thrones drifting through space. No single moment scholars could point to and say this is when it ended. Instead, the council faded. Quietly. Inevitably. And that, more than anything, terrified those who had built their lives around its permanence. Years passed. The council chamber still existed, hollowed into its dead moon. But fewer seats were filled each cycle. Some species withdrew formally. Others simply stopped sending delegates. The high chair still hovered at the center, but Speaker Othuen spoke more often to silence than to a crowd. The galaxy no longer waited for permission. Trade flowed along open corridors maintained by shared oversight. Defense pacts formed and dissolved organically. Disputes were messier now, harder, louder, sometimes violent, but they were owned by those involved. No distant authority delayed justice in the name of balance. No one could erase a system quietly anymore. Humanity did not stand at the center of this new order. That was deliberate. Mara Vance watched the transformation from a smaller chamber on Earth, one with windows. Real ones. Stars visible beyond glass. She was no longer a delegate. She had resigned. Not in protest. Not in shame. But because the role she had played was no longer needed. The galaxy had learned to speak for itself. Ro visited her on the day the last council charter was formally dissolved. He looked older. So did she. Stress did that. Survival did it faster. It's done, he said, setting a data slate on the table between them. Mara didn't touch it. They finally voted. Ro nodded. Unanimous. Or as close as they could manage. The Council of Aligned Systems no longer claims authority beyond voluntary mediation. Mara exhaled slowly. She felt no triumph. Only a strange, aching quiet. They'll say we killed it, she said. Ro smiled faintly. They already do. History will argue about it for centuries, Mara murmured. Yes, Ro agreed. But the stars won't. She looked up at him. What do you mean? Ro gestured toward the window, toward the scattered lights of distant systems. The stars will remember that when the old order chose containment over conscience, he said. Someone refused to play along. Admiral Elias Ward did not live to see the long-term consequences of humanity's choice. He died years later, quietly, aboard the UNS Resolute, after overseeing the transfer of command to a multinational fleet council composed of humans and non-humans alike. His final log was short. Power ends when it forgets why it was built. It became required reading in more systems than Earth ever expected. The AI that had served beside him was decommissioned soon after, not destroyed, but archived, its core logic preserved for study. Its final assessment concluded with an unexpected statement. Humanity's defining trait is not dominance. It is a refusal. Refusal to submit to injustice. Refusal to rule simply because it could. Refusal to pretend that peace purchased with silence was peace at all. Not every species welcomed the new era. Some resented humanity for tearing down what they had learned to survive under. Others blamed Earth for conflicts that followed, even when those conflicts were centuries old and merely unmasked. Human convoys were attacked. Outposts sabotaged. Accusations never fully ceased. Humanity endured them, not with conquest, with consistency. Aid ships still came, even to those who cursed them. Corridors remained open. Oversight remained shared. Failures were published. Crimes prosecuted publicly. Sometimes, humans lose influence because of that transparency. They accepted it, because influence gained by fear had already proven worthless. Decades later, children across dozens of species learned a new phrase, not as a warning, but as a reference point. The day the Council failed, not because it was attacked, but because it chose to betray those it claimed to protect. And alongside that lesson came another. The day humanity answered, not with annihilation, but with a declaration that power would no longer hide behind procedure. Far beyond mapped space, something ancient shifted. A signal, older than the Council, older than recorded history, adjusted its long, patient observation. It had watched empires rise and calcify, watched councils rot behind words like stability and order, watched species destroy themselves when given too much power, too quickly. Humanity had been marked early as a risk, a volatile variable. Now, the variable has changed. The signal was recalculated. This species dismantles its own advantage. This species binds itself. This species does not seek to be alone at the top. That was new. The signal turned its attention inward, preparing processes that had been dormant for millennia. First contact protocols, long abandoned. Because perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy had finally produced something worth speaking to. On Earth, Mara stood beneath an open sky as night fell. No alarms. No fleets departing. Just stars. She thought of Larkspur, of Ashkel Rift, of the Council Chamber and its false gravity. At the moment, everything changed, not when Earth's fleet arrived, but when humanity chose how it would arrive. Someone once asked her if she believed humanity had won. She hadn't answered then. Now, watching the stars, she finally had won. We didn't win, she said softly, to no one in particular. We refused to lose ourselves. And somewhere in the dark, the stars kept that memory. Because long after councils fade and empires collapse, what survives is not who ruled, but who chose restraint when domination was easier. And that choice echoed farther than any fleet ever could.